Have you ever reached the end of the day and asked yourself, what am I doing with my life? You had plans. You were going to work on that project, hit the gym, learn a new skill, or finally chase the dream you've been talking about for years. Instead, you spent hours scrolling through social media, watching videos, or telling yourself, I'll start tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes, and nothing changes. Most people call this laziness. They say you just need more discipline or better time management. But what if the problem goes much deeper than that? Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung described an archetype known as the Puer Aeternus, a Latin phrase meaning eternal youth. It refers to someone who physically becomes an adult but psychologically struggles to let go of childhood. This isn't about intelligence or talent. In fact, many people caught in this pattern are creative, ambitious, and full of ideas. The real problem is something else. They crave absolute freedom. They don't want to be tied down by a career, a relationship, a routine, or even a single identity. Every commitment feels like closing the door on countless other possibilities. At first, that sounds exciting. After all, who wouldn't want endless options? But over time, that freedom becomes a prison. Jung described this as living a provisional life, a life where everything feels temporary. Maybe you stay in a job, convincing yourself it's only until your real opportunity arrives. Maybe your room stays messy because you'll organize everything once life finally begins. Maybe you avoid committing to relationships because you believe someone perfect might come along. On the surface, these seem like harmless decisions, but together, they create a dangerous habit. You never fully invest yourself in anything. Instead of living your life, you begin watching it from the sidelines. The strange part is that this lifestyle can feel comforting. As long as you never fully commit, you never have to discover your limits. As long as you never truly try, you can keep telling yourself that you're capable of greatness. Your dreams stay perfect because reality never gets the chance to test them. Think about that for a moment. A business that never starts can never fail. A novel that is never written can never receive criticism. A relationship that never becomes serious can never end in heartbreak. Your mind begins to confuse avoiding failure with staying safe. But there is a hidden cost. Months become years. Years become decades. The opportunities you thought would always be waiting slowly disappear. One day, you wake up and realize you've spent more time imagining your future than actually building it. The hardest truth is this. Potential means nothing without action. The world doesn't reward the person who could have done something amazing. It rewards the person who actually showed up, struggled, failed, learned, and kept going. So if this pattern isn't caused by laziness, if you're intelligent, if you genuinely want a better life, then why does your mind keep pulling you back into procrastination and endless waiting? The answer is surprisingly simple, and it often begins much earlier than you think. But that leaves one important question. Why? Why would someone with talent, intelligence, and ambition repeatedly avoid taking action? The answer often lies much earlier in life. Jungian analyst Marie-Louise von Franz observed that many people who fit the Puer Aeternus pattern were often praised as exceptional children. Maybe you were the smartest student in your class. Maybe your parents or teachers constantly told you that you were gifted, destined for greatness, or capable of anything. At first, that sounds like a blessing, but it can also become a trap. Instead of building your identity around effort, discipline, and persistence, you begin building it around potential. As long as people see you as talented, everything feels safe. Then adulthood arrives. The real world doesn't reward potential. It rewards consistency. Suddenly, you're surrounded by people who aren't necessarily more gifted than you, but they show up every day, practice their craft, and keep going even when they fail. For someone whose identity depends on being naturally talented, failure feels terrifying. Every mistake seems to say, maybe I'm not as special as I thought. So your mind develops a defense mechanism. It whispers, don't start yet. Wait until you're more prepared. You'll do it when the timing is perfect. Because if you never fully try, you never have to discover what you're actually capable of. That's why procrastination isn't always laziness. Sometimes it's fear wearing a different mask. This fear creates three powerful traps. The first trap is escaping into distraction. Whenever life becomes uncomfortable, you reach for something that gives instant relief. Social media, gaming, endless videos, or anything that keeps your mind occupied. These distractions reduce anxiety for a moment, but they also steal the time needed to build the life you want. The second trap is avoiding commitment. Whether it's a career, a relationship, or a personal goal, commitment feels like giving up your freedom. So you keep searching for something better instead of making the most of what you already have. The third trap is blaming everything outside yourself. It's easy to point at the economy, your boss, your family, or bad luck. Sometimes those obstacles are real, but if every setback is someone else's fault, you'll never discover how much power you actually have to change your own life. So how do you break free? First, change the way you see responsibility. Responsibility isn't a prison. It's the structure that gives your life meaning. Second, learn to value ordinary habits. Clean your room, exercise regularly, finish the task you started, pay your bills on time. These small actions may seem boring, but they They build the discipline needed for extraordinary achievements. Third, stop trying to avoid failure. Choose one thing you've been postponing and do it this week. You might fail. You might make mistakes. That's normal. Confidence isn't built by waiting until you're ready. It's built by acting before you feel ready. Finally, don't rely on motivation alone. Create accountability. Find a mentor. Join a disciplined community. Tell someone about your goals. The right environment makes it much harder to return to old habits. Remember this: potential is only a promise. Action is what turns that promise into reality. The greatest tragedy isn't failing. The greatest tragedy is spending your entire life protecting your potential instead of using it. So ask yourself one question. What is the one decision you've been avoiding because you're afraid of failing? Make that decision today. Your future won't change because you thought about it. It will change because you finally acted. And that is the moment the eternal boy begins to become a man.